In the heart of Jerusalem, under the blinding media glare and the weight of collective hope and skepticism, U.S. President Donald Trump addressed Israel's parliament, the Knesset, amid one of the most turbulent periods in the Middle East's modern history. But as he outlined his vision for what he called the historic dawn of a new Middle East, the chamber was suddenly shaken. A protest erupted, Knesset members were moved by security, and the world was forced to confront the unresolved tensions that continue to define the region. Today's story isn't just about political theater. It's about the deeper struggle for peace, the clashing narratives of identity, and the raw truth of lives interrupted by war. President Trump's arrival in Tel Aviv marked more than just another diplomatic handshake. It was the beginning of a historic mission, with the eyes of the world watching closely. After 2 years of devastating violence, military campaigns, and diplomatic breakdowns, the region was left scarred both physically and emotionally. The recent hostage releases, the announcement of a preliminary ceasefire, and the assembling of global leaders in Egypt signaled a fragile hope for lasting peace. And it was Trump who positioned himself as the architect of this new dawn. The stakes were immense. Both Israeli and Palestinian societies had endured losses too deep to fully recover from. Over 1,200 killed in the Hamas attacks of October 7, 2023. 251 hostages taken to Gaza, and repeated cycles of retaliatory strikes that left much of the territory in ruins. As Trump stepped up to the Knesset podium, he bore the weight of these tragedies and the expectations of millions. Just minutes into his address, the chamber erupted. 2 Israeli lawmakers, Hadash party leader Ayman Odeh and Party MK Ofer Kasif, rose in protest, brandishing signs demanding "Recognize Palestine." Their demonstration was not merely symbolic. It highlighted a deep rift within Israeli society about the future of coexistence and the cost of peace. The disruption was met with swift action. Knesset security quickly removed the lawmakers, applause broke out among the remaining members, and Trump himself remarked dryly, "That was very efficient," before continuing his speech. For those watching, the scene was electric, not only as political theater, but as a microcosm of the region's ongoing dialogue and dissent. Odeh later criticized the hypocrisy in the plenum, decrying what he described as efforts to absolve Netanyahu's government of the crimes committed in Gaza. Despite the interruption, Trump pressed on, invoking the language of hope and transformation. He proclaimed, "This is not merely the conclusion of a war. This signifies the end of an era of terror and death, and the commencement of a period filled with faith, hope, and God." He framed his role and the United States as pivotal catalysts for this change, referencing the successful negotiation and release of hostages from Gaza and the return of Palestinian detainees. He stated that for both Israelis and Palestinians, the long and painful nightmare is over, inspiring chants of "Trump, Trump, Trump" from enthusiastic lawmakers. Central to Trump's speech was the announcement of the initial phase of a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, brokered with persistent U.S. involvement. The deal dictated that Hamas would release the remaining 20 living hostages, as well as the bodies of 28 deceased individuals. In return, Israel agreed to withdraw from approximately half of Gaza and release 250 Palestinian prisoners, plus over 1,700 Gazans detained since the October 2023 attacks. Such agreements, however, are always fraught with complexity. Hamas and Israeli officials had a history of failed negotiations and broken truces. Trump stressed the importance of a board of peace that would oversee the fragile new arrangement, a bureaucratic layer that some analysts saw as essential, but others feared might merely delay true reconciliation. The passionate protest that interrupted Trump's speech was only the latest manifestation of ongoing divisions. Lawmakers like Odeh and Kasif accused Israeli leadership of refusing justice and perpetuating systems of occupation and apartheid. On the other hand, the assembled majority in the Knesset celebrated the event as a triumph, a vindication of Israeli resilience and American leadership. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, though aligned with Trump's peace initiative, still resisted the idea of recognizing a Palestinian state. This stance kept Israel at odds with much of the international community, highlighting the persistent gridlock over the two-state solution. While Trump stopped short of full recognition, he pushed for progress and promised American support for future negotiations. After the speech, Trump joined a peace summit in Egypt, meeting with President Al-Fattah el-Sisi and other leaders to discuss the second phase of the accord, a sign that the diplomatic story was only beginning. Audience members at the Knesset donned red caps emblazoned with "Trump the Peace President," echoing the branding that has come to define Trump's political identity. Key figures from his administration, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, son-in-law Jared Kushner, and daughter Ivanka Trump, symbolize the concerted effort behind America's latest Middle East peace push. For many, Kushner's involvement recalled his earlier successes brokering the Abraham Accords, and his presence added an extra layer of gravitas to the proceedings. The Knesset speaker even remarked that Trump deserved the Nobel Peace Prize, though notable dissenters made their absence felt by refusing to attend. The legacy of Trump's Knesset speech will likely be debated for years. Supporters argued that his efforts catalyzed meaningful change, recalling the Abraham Accords and his consistent advocacy for Israeli interests. Critics, however, saw the event as carrying the same contradictions as previous peace attempts: bold rhetoric, high expectations, but little guarantee of lasting stability. Protesters and opposition voices called out the hypocrisy of both American and Israeli leadership, pointing to the suffering endured in Gaza and the failure to secure Palestinian recognition. Even with hostages returned and prisoners released, trust remained elusive. The interruption at the Knesset was thus more than a moment of political spectacle. It crystallized the unresolved pain of the region, the competing visions for its future, and the enormous challenge of translating diplomatic gestures into enduring reality. International media covered the speech and its interruption in real time, capturing not only the drama but also the intense global interest in the American-led peace process. Leaders from across the world issued statements praising the ceasefire while cautioning against premature optimism. The White House released images of Trump greeting hostage families, a powerful emotional note reinforcing the message of hope and reconciliation. Critics in Europe and the Arab world questioned whether the deal could hold, given the bitter history of failed agreements and mounting civilian casualties. For the average viewer, the story unfolded with the pace of a thriller: uncertainty, protest, dramatic removal, and the solemn promise of a new era. As the peace summit in Egypt commences, the region once again teeters on the edge. The deal brokered by President Trump and his administration is a testament to diplomatic ingenuity, but all parties agree that the coming weeks will be critical. Much hinges on whether the ceasefire will endure, if humanitarian needs can be met, and whether Israel and Palestine can find common ground. Netanyahu declined to attend the summit, citing scheduling conflicts, but affirmed his commitment to peace. Trump continued on, meeting international leaders and pushing for concrete steps toward rebuilding Gaza and securing a safer future. The ultimate test will be whether the violence truly subsides and if both societies can move beyond the grief and trauma of the past 2 years. The images of the Knesset, applause, protest, security response, and the persistent call for recognition serve as a powerful metaphor for the Middle East's ongoing journey. President Trump's speech, for all its division and drama, shines a light on the potent possibilities of diplomacy, the complexities of reconciliation, and the resilience of people determined to find peace. For global citizens, journalists, and policymakers alike, the lesson is clear. The work of peace is never complete. It must be constantly renewed, protected, and above all, actively pursued, whether in Jerusalem's parliament, the streets of Gaza, or the chambers of international summits. The Middle East stands at a crossroads, and the world will be watching closely to see if the promises of politicians can truly be transformed into the reality of peace.